to a life, can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I rip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.
All right, hello. Sorry, you guys, for the feedback. I forgot to mute the other computer. Hopefully, you guys are doing well today. Hopefully, your weekend is off to a positive start today. As we jump into this discussion, I want to post a couple of questions up on the screen for you good people. As you come in, don't forget to like and share the commentary, and of course the content of those people that resonate with you, so that I can see who is in alliance in the live chat with one another. I want to have a comprehensive conversation about a couple of interviews that I saw. There is one particular interview on the Lapeef network that I will talk about, that Kevin Samuels did, and they aired today, a couple of hours ago. But I also will talk about an interview that Kevin Samuels did with this other person. Let me share. What's that? I'm gonna put this up, and I'm gonna it's No Jumper who did the interview, but I'm gonna probably go through putting up this interview, and then I'm gonna kind of scroll through, because it is pretty lengthy. I'm gonna scroll through specific areas of the interview so that we can have a discussion about some of the things that were said, some of the things that was discussed, and how I now have a greater understanding of Kevin Samuels, his position, and some things that are the underpinning of the thoughts that he projects into the public, onto the manosphere, Black men, and of course the way that he governs himself and his life. Is it this particular one though? Once I pull it up, you let me know which one. I mean, if this is the one that you're referring to. I'm about to share it in just a moment. But the first thing that I want to enter into the conversation is that on the Lapeef network, there were a couple of things that really stood out to me. There are several interviews that they've done with Kevin Samuels, okay? And there are women on this panel, one to which I've seen her kind of pander to Kevin Samuels and his content and things like that, and some of the things that she put out about her experiences and the way that she treated her child's father and things like that, and conversations that she may or may not have engaged in on social media with this guy. I'm gonna delve into those issues one by one, because I kind of have them lined up. But I gotta say this: at some point, we as people, the collective, in the Black community and otherwise, but in America in general, we have to gravitate to securing a greater sense of self through understanding our true purpose, based on our individual and collective goals as a society. She has blonde hair, Trey. I'm not sure what her name is. Because I really wasn't there. She didn't say much in the interviews that I did watch for this content. And it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff. So in that particular interview, Kevin Samuels specifically said, and the title of it is, Black women do not feel like they belong to Black men. Yeah, but, and he was having a conversation with a clinician, a therapist, and I'm not quite sure how she walked herself into that situation where she was trapped by him and his dance, but just with a different line of questioning. I'm not sure how that happened, but it is what it is. So we're definitely going to get into this stuff, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share it, but make sure you guys go ahead and share this video so that we can start and we can have a collaborative conversation. I'm definitely here for accountability today, and I want to have conversations about some of the things that we see in this this video, but I also want to have conversations around accountability in our community and some of your perceptions and the things that have shaped your perceptions around building healthy relationships and what that means, whether it's in or out of the community. There are a lot of things that Kevin Samuels has said during this particular video. He's on the road. Okay, that's fine. There are a lot of things that he said during this video that undercut much of the stuff that we see on his channel. But also there are several things that he said over the course of the interview that I'm going to show that gives us a greater understanding of why it is that his valuation of a woman it lies within her physical presentation of self, right? And also why it is that he feels like the value of a man lies within his financial stability. Over the course of the last couple of years, he really goes into depth about his process and his belief system around what it means to be a successful man. And I'm curious as to how many men out there, whether you're married or single, how many of you feel like you have a high degree of value? And if so, what is that equated to? Like, how do you come up with your personal sense of value, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get into this stuff, you guys. It's something. It's the whole thing here. Also, if you guys are tuning in for the first time, let me know that you're a new follower. I specifically want you guys to share my YouTube, simply because I'm trying to expand my network to 500 by July. You know, we're right around the corner now, so I know you guys can help me reach that goal. And I'm pretty sure you're going to find this content and this interview pretty interesting. I really hope that you guys share this specifically with the men that you know, simply because I feel like this is content that we need to be analyzing and having conversation with men about. There are a lot of things that over the course of me viewing this content, however, I do have to admit that I have seen a lot of things that I've seen, mannerisms, his physical responses and body language or whatever, and his verbal responses and the way that he approaches certain topics that were brought up for discussion. And I'm pretty sure, like with all interviewing, we kind of go over what will be asked, what content will be covered and things before we really get into it. So I'm pretty sure he had already kind of fabricated in his mind what he wanted to convey, what messages he wanted to put out there, and how he wanted to look, how he wanted to appear. There are some very specific things that I'm going to go to the very beginning of this, because I believe it's in the beginning where they address the fact of his coming into this interview and what he wanted it to look like. So just a sec, I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna shut up because you guys don't want to hear me. You want to hear this. Let's see. And I'm gonna hit play. Oops. Hold on. Let's see which part I said.
I heard that a Bigfoot murdered 3 guys on a doe farm. There's always been rumors.
Yes, that's 49, 30, 38. Hold on.
A lot in that regard, yeah. So, well, it's the marital structure in the family court. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Other folks are doing this. Why?
Hold on, right here.
And I'm like, man, you're in the middle 30s. And you want a man making 150? I'm like, what are you talking about? There's like 8 guys.
Right, especially there, making that much money is damn near impossible.
So, and I use a lot of facts, a lot of data, a lot of statistics, and I have a mathematical mind, so I can actually take that stuff and inject it into a conversation and make it make sense. Like I had an example one day where I said, you're roughly looking for less than, you got 7.5 million women looking for roughly less than 200,000 men. And that's just in our community. They're like, oh, I'm like, yeah. And what it does is it's starting to really crystallize. Do you really want that? Or do you just want to be safe? And that's what I find most women want. They think safety and security is coming in money. And what it really comes in is having that something that's unique between one man and one woman. There will always be an understanding in a relationship that no one else will understand, but those two will, and it works for them. And that's why you get the 50 years. But we don't get that anymore. We're still trying to get these things and hoping that makes us last longer. It just makes you look better on the way to breaking up.
I hear that. You know, it's interesting because sometimes it feels like within hip hop or, you know, Black entertainment or whatever, that a lot of times they want, the media perhaps wants the liberal attitude, the leftist attitude to be sort of the default attitude. But then I think more often than not, it seems like it's somebody more along your lines who really is kind of the center of the conversation. Like the average person watching this kind of content probably falls in line a lot closer with your way of viewing the world versus the sort of myth that has been spun about everybody in that community wanting to hear sort of like woke propaganda all the time. And then somebody like you comes out and all of a sudden you get a huge fan base seemingly overnight. And it kind of is
crazy, right?
Yeah. And I mean, what do you think of that? Do you think that
what I did is, you know, I did a lot of work and research and polling and stuff behind the scenes. I kept asking myself, why is it that in the Black community, we can't seem to make families like we used to? We used to be married at a rate of 80% in the height of segregation and Jim Crow and, you know, the worst parts of the racial Bible. We were married at a rate of 80%. We had churches and families and communities and all sorts of stuff. But now our numbers, we're like the tip of the spear. We can't seem to get it together. What's going on? And we were saying, well, it's the marital structure in the family court. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Other folks are doing this. Why can't we send it to us? I asked a lot of questions. And one thing that used to keep coming up is this whole high value man thing, high value man. So what I did is I said, all right, what does that mean? I went and defined it because it can't just be money. And I said, what men across time, across any region, across any country, any system of government have separated themselves from other men, and what are the characteristics they shared? And I defined it by, you know, making a certain amount of money over a certain length of time, being accepted or acknowledged as a high value man by other high value men, or having the potential to be in the group, because it's like a little fraternity of guys, having a network of high value men and other people, and then being useful to others and the group. So guys like that are always in demand, whether or not they're 100,000 or 100 or 100 million. And I said, all right, well, and if women tend to say they wanted a man, they wanted this, they wanted these things, because the money is cool, but if it's in Anchorage, Alaska, it ain't doing you any good because you can't be seen doing these things. If you have no connections, you can't have, you know, influence over other women. And that was what really was the catalyst when I started defining it in that term and asking ladies, well, what do you want? And they were saying they want this. I'm like, all right. Well, you do realize that's rare, right? And you can't be this at 30 years old typically, because who makes that kind of money over a 3 to 5 year time frame and all these other criteria? That's what really started doing it. And one thing I also did is I said, all right, no disrespect to my friends in athletics, entertainment, or music, but their money comes differently.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about a business class. So I don't, because I often get, well, are rappers and actors and are they high value? I'm like, they make a lot of money, but high value is this. So now we start talking about men who make this, and they do tend to lean more traditional. They want more traditional outcomes. They want, okay, they want to, you're going to have to be married and bring your wife to the company Christmas party, or you want somebody who's going to be able to, raise your children, right? When you're out on the road driving that truck for, 4 days a week. And it's not the liberal, quote unquote, narrative. It's much more of a, because the Black community has always been much.
And just for a second, I want to point out the fact that he says that he's recognized that Black women want men who are going to bring their wives to the office Christmas party. Okay? Before I get into the rest of it, just continue to listen.
Much more traditional.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're just having a conversation saying, how do we get what we want? And it's through if you want to have a community or anything else like that, it starts with the fundamental building block. It's the family. So I don't judge what people want. I just say, what do you want and how do you get there? And more people say they want that than anything else. And I focus on that. I don't focus on the 10, 20% of men or women who say, I don't want that. I want some different kind of range. I'm like, cool, that's over here. And I keep it very tight and very focused. So if you watch my show, I have asked the same questions and the same reason to get to the same place to see, are you playing here? Are you playing there? And more often than not, we're starting to see more people do want these kind of things. But are you willing to do what it takes to get what you want? That's what it comes down to.
And then too, like, I like what you say about women rather be a baby mama before a wife now. And I said, that's really part of the problem as well too, is, you can get sex and, have a baby with a woman and she's not going to prioritize getting married. It's like it went in reverse. You know what I mean? I feel like it'd be a lot more successful couples if somebody dealt with somebody and they demanded that they get married first and then have children and then do that. And it's like, I got 2 kids with I got 2 baby mamas. It's just.
Well, coming from the church, if you were in the 60s and you got pregnant, they would send you from Oklahoma up to Chicago and all of a sudden you came back with a sister. But now I see the same women going into the church, coming in with 2 kids by 2 different men, pregnant with another, but they sit on the front pew right here and the pastor shouting them out. I'm like, we've taken away consequence. We've taken away judgment. And also men have left the church because they're like, this is not right. So you have women being fed.
All right. So now I'm going to stop and we're going to talk a little bit about what we've seen so far in this. In what we watched. Okay. So this guy, and I'm not really sure as to the names of the people that Kevin Samuels is sitting with and interviewing and things like that. But so this guy, before Kevin Samuels gets into the value of women or the thing that is wrong with our community, as he talks about the church and what the church is responsible for when it comes to not holding women accountable, this man has a direct comment that speaks to the fact that and these women that Kevin Samuels is now talking about are in the same situation. Okay? They are in the same situation. So what does that mean when Kevin Samuels overlooks the male that is sitting right in front of him, who says, well, I have 2 kids by 2 different baby mamas. And then speaks negatively about the female who has 2 kids, 3 kids, however many, 2 kids by different men, and who's now pregnant again. So why is it that the conversation always has to shift to the responsibility being only on the woman? In another interview that I mentioned on the Lapeef Network, Kevin Samuels has said that women in the Black community fail to hold other women accountable. My only issue is that my only issue with that is this. If I'm a person who says that women in the Black community fails to hold other women accountable for their actions, for whatever it is that we're having a discussion about, essentially, I need to be the person that is holding men accountable if I'm a man. Right? You have a man sitting right in front of you who has obviously exercised his options, in the words of Kevin Samuels. And he's told you that he has more than one baby mama, more than one kid out here in these streets by different women. And instead of you taking that and using that as an opportunity to kind of shift the discussion so that we can have a real conversation about the ownership of people, because this guy is obviously ready for that conversation. When he makes the statement and he says, I just feel like, people should position themselves to be married before they have kids. And I can't say I go against that. That's my own principles of life. It is what it is. However, for me, I do not blame, shame, or hold other people responsible of how life may unfold for them or what they may believe is important for them, right? And I don't expect for other people in the world to live their life in accordance with my personal values. I only look to what makes sense. And what makes sense is that if we are to hold one side accountable, we also need to hold the other side accountable. And I know that you guys have, the ones that have been following me for a while, I know that I'm here for accountability. And I talk about accountability of women all the time, simply because I feel like women have to do a better job of gauging the type of energy that they invite into their life, into their energy center, and the way that they interact with people. Okay, so purposeful interactions is what I'm talking about. If you're going to be in a relationship with a man, I feel like women have to do their due diligence and go and navigate the realms of their preparedness to move into a space of, sharing time, space, and energy with a man. And then as a result of that, they need to be doing the proper vetting. When the man is going after them, they need to be exercising their options accordingly. So that means staying away from sexual practices, because sexual practices can cause confusion. It can also cause your actions or your purview of who that person is and their becoming, and how they are either effective or ineffective in adding value to you, right? It could cause you to just look at that thing in a way that's not realistic. I think that you have to be realistic. For a person who says that he's about numbers, for a person who says that he is about getting the Black family back together, right? One of his followers was on this channel the other day. That's what he said. So I can only go by that. Okay. If that is his end game. And when I push play again, you guys are going to see that Kevin Samuels makes other commentary on what really leads to the underpinning of how he feels about women when he goes to, the rhetoric of, well, what's your dress size? How much do you weigh? Kevin Samuels has made it very clear. Men don't want a woman who weighs more than they do. That's what he said in this interview. I'm going to play it for you. We want to have this discussion. Other thing he said earlier, he was asking about people being willing to make sacrifices? What are you willing to do to get what it is that you want, right? What do you want? In his words, what do you want? How many other people want what you want? What are people who want what you want? What are they doing? And what are you willing to do to get it, right? So that's social comparison in its purest form. Social comparison theory is the number one leading thing that is the underpinning of people with insecure attachments, with insecure personality characteristics, with insecure lifestyles, and therefore deep-seated depression and a lack of willingness and a lack of feeling hope, right? Or feeling like there are possibilities for them to step into places where they can be successful. Like that's what seeds that. So you can't live your whole life trying to compare yourself to other people. You have to learn how to actualize, look at what's in front of you in the here and now, in this immediate space, and make the best out of that. Healthy people have a really good sense of self. They know who they are. They don't question who they are. They question the process of their becoming as they come closer to autonomy. They look at and evaluate the experiences that they have in life so that they do have a high degree of value when they move into relationships, okay? So what Kevin Samuels is basically saying throughout this interview is that if he looks the part to outside people, he has a higher level of value because his personal experiences have taught him that men that are in successful places, based on his perception, have women that look and operate like this. He had a conversation about the fact that he took an escort to a company function. Didn't Kevin Samuels just say that women want a man who is going to take them to company functions? His wife to company functions. This man bragged about having taken an escort to a company function. As we get into this interview, you're going to see this guy, the guys that are interviewing him, you're going to see them ask questions about, well, how is it that you remain balanced around all of these women? How do you remain balanced in these situations where these women they're hot and they're around you, et cetera, and not mix business with pleasure? I'm curious about some of the ways that he responded to them. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit play. I'm going to let you guys listen to what drives Kevin Samuels' underpinnings of the way that he sees life. Kelso says his words and the way he lives his life don't validate his opinion to take him seriously. No, I don't think so, but he does make a good point. He made a valid point somewhere in this video, and I want you guys to kind of go back and watch it. It's called the Kevin Samuels interview. It's 42. No, it's longer than that. It's a little bit over an hour, but it's pretty lengthy. However, I feel like this in its the core of this video gives us a really good idea of what we're dealing with when we're dealing with a person like Kevin Samuels and he's rendering advisement to people out there in the manosphere. But also it gives a lot of insight as to why it is he feels so elevated at this point. He mentioned that he's having a positive impact on the Black community by the way that he dresses, but he quickly redacted that statement by saying, does that mean everybody needs to be going out wearing suits? That's not everybody's style, so no. But I feel like I'm impacting the way that men value presenting themselves in public places and spaces online and things like that, and young men. So I feel like I'm making a positive impact on the Black community. That's one of the things that I mentioned yesterday that he has the potential to do. According to the interview, he's doing something called Suit Saturday. But according to him, all men aren't suit material. So what are you doing to inspire those men to take a higher amount of value in the way that they present themselves out there in public? Make it make sense for me. And so I'm gonna hit the play button because I don't want to talk too much to that other video while this one is going, and we had so much to cover. Let's see.
What they want to hear to keep them buying books, paying tithes, and all sorts of kind of stuff. But the men aren't in these places because the men say, I don't want this. You can do that. You want to have children, that's fine, but I don't want to pay for another guy's kids. And now the women who find themselves in that position are like, well, wait a minute. This is cool 3 years ago. No, it really wasn't. Guys just couldn't say anything because if you were in a position to have a platform to say something, you'd be deplatformed. This has only been something that's been all right to talk about in the last under 12 months.
Right.
So make hay while you can, right? Because it's the reality, and more women are starting to realize that if you do have kids, okay, understand what that effectively does is it reduces your overall marketplace value, and don't get mad at the market. Just adjust accordingly. It's not a death sentence to say if you have kids, but it does mean that it's a different mating calculus. And women have this mating calculus too. If you don't make a certain amount of money, if you're not a certain race, height, look, junk size, I mean, car, y'all have a calculus. Ask a typical woman what she wants in a man, she'll write War and Peace. Ask her what she's gonna bring to the table, doesn't even fit on the back of a stamp. There's a problem there. There's a problem there.
There was a video that went viral on somebody's podcast or show, and I can't remember the actual name of it, but he asked the co-host, the woman on the show, he asked her, like, could you date a guy who was making, I forget what the number was, like 150 grand a year? And she goes, maybe if he's selling drugs on the side or something.
Yeah.
I was disturbed. I'm like, that is the worst thing. And she said it like she wasn't joking, which really pissed me off.
Did she have a short haircut?
I think so, yeah.
I want fast money. I need that fast money.
Right. And you want a guy who's going to be risking 20 years in jail for trafficking cocaine? And you think that's cute?
And that's the thing too. Like, coming from where I come from, like, guys will take penitentiary chances every single day to impress other women.
Bro,
you know what I mean?
I know guys who had good chemical engineering jobs who were trafficking narcotics. I'm like, you got a master's in chemical engineering, but you decided to be an H dealer?
Okay. There are so many issues with the way that this guy is making it seem like, you know, relationships are and are not important. Let's talk about what I've learned about Kevin Samuels from the very beginning of this video. So those of you who go back and you check this video out from the very beginning, you're going to hear Kevin Samuels talk about how he sees the women in his life, to include his ex-wives. You're going to have, he talks to the women that molded his understandings of relationships, of, you know, what it meant to be tethered to another person. And one of the things that stood out for me is that he looked at how his aunt died alone. And he looked at how his other aunt is in alignment with, she's going to die alone as well. He mentioned that his mother was married at 50 and she waited so long to get married. She didn't have much value. And so at that point, she was accepting lesser than what she would have been due previously. So a couple of things. This is what really stands out to me. So when you go out here and you're shaping what you consider to be fact, and he mentioned earlier in this video also that he's a guy about numbers and he can misconstrue statistics and make it look like it's valid. He said that. That's him. He said that. He did. So for those of you who are in the manosphere, I want you guys to tell me how you feel about that statement that came from his mouth. He can make it look like it makes sense. Kevin Samuels, all you got to do is give him some numbers. Let me wiggle it around, make it look like it makes sense. So here's the thing. The statistics that you're looking at, first of all, you would have to be looking at current statistics. You cannot be surveying the opinions of people that are giving you responses from a broken place, because the reality is research is based on validity of the self-report. Okay. So I know that everybody isn't a psychotherapist. I get that totally. I know everybody is not a statistician. You know, I get that. Everybody's not into math, right? Research, good research, facts, right, as they say, are based on a representative sample of the population in which you're going to have a conversation about, one. And then we have something called standard deviation. We have to understand what are the lines of separation between the validity of what it is that we're reporting and the possibility that it could be something else. Right. And what are some of the influencers, right? So what are some of the external influencers that definitely have a huge impact on the way that the information is received by the person that's self-reporting? And also we want to know whether or not those people are biased. What are their biases? So that we can figure out how reliable the information is. So without those coefficients, without understanding how the research may be skewed, how can we say that that's fact? How can we say that? And then he has the nerve to say that a woman can, you know, you can ask a woman what it is that she wants out of a man and she can write that down. And then when you ask her what she brings to the table, it's a blank slate. So what do you think that a woman should bring to the table? What do you guys think that a woman should bring to the table? And equally, what do you women think that a man should bring to the table? I titled this, Kevin Samuels says that Black women don't feel like they belong to Black men. The ownership mindset and the way that he made this comparison when he was talking to this therapist, it just didn't make sense. Okay. So here's the thing. How can you ask a question and expect someone who is not a part of that population to respond in a way that is based on facts, one way or the other? The initial response of the therapist was to move away from the impact of understanding that, or the impact of entertaining the question of, do Black women feel like they belong to Black men? And then he goes down the rabbit hole. Well, do Hispanic women feel like they belong to Hispanic men? Do white women feel like they belong to white men? Do Indian women feel like they belong to Indian men? That type of thing. First of all, we can't comment. We can't say that. If you were to ask us about the way that women in history, when women were seen as property, and in these countries where women are still seen as property, if we're to talk about that, right, and we're to make that comparison to Black women, I know that a lot of people don't do a whole lot of research, but given my history, Aqua Tofana, okay, Aqua Tofana was created ages ago when women were actually property of their husbands. And in Italy, where it became a super prevalent thing, right, as a means of women to get out of marriages where they were the property of their husbands. And these are Italian women. So what color are they? Obviously, they didn't feel like they belonged to men because they wanted out of the situation and they poisoned them to death in very high and alarming numbers. And these men died. And it made it look like natural causes. And they did this for years, for decades without being caught. So let's talk about how you're making your comparison, what you're basing that fact off of. When you ask a person, does a woman feel like she belongs? Do Black women specifically? And that's the thing that really gets me. And then he goes and he contradicts himself by saying, I've dated everything. So why should a Black woman feel like her worth, her presence, her being belongs to her culture of men? Why? For what? How do you know that Black woman isn't homosexual, lesbian? Why would she feel like she belongs to a Black man? What if she feels like, you know what, I belong to the man that I've married, and her man that she's married is Indian? What if the man that she's married is African? The man that she's married is Native American. The man that she's married is a white man, Italian man, Spanish man. So I think that the mindset that we have to constantly be in competition for ownership of other people, we need to move away from that. We have to, if we're going to have healthy relationships, you know? But yeah, so let's watch some more of this wonderful video.
Why? Because it's a clout.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, all right, bro, this is nuts. So when you hear women saying that, I don't want no, and that's what really pissed me off. When I started hearing, and I don't want to mention, the content creators, when I heard women saying, I don't want no 9-to-5 guy. I need a guy who has an entrepreneurial mindset to match my flow. And I'm like, you just gonna shit on every man that works?
Right.
I got a real freaking problem with that. Yeah, I sit in the air-conditioned office and make deals, but I come from salt of the earth, hard-working mother effing people, and you just no,
It ain't good enough.
Right.
And because at some point that
This is what I want on tape. Soleil not smiling.
As a teenager, I carried a camera with me everywhere I went.
will be me, because it keeps going. Where does it stop? And no one could tell these ladies that you're saying, I want a man. And she has, would you like a man to work at the bank? Well, yeah, but and whatever. And maybe if he was hustling, doing a little fraud or something. But okay, let's just say he did all that. He did all that to get you. Then
fraud.
when he goes away and get his Goodfellas sentence, you gonna stay down?
Bang bang.
You gone.
Bang
You
bang.
gone. You are gone.
She's out of here.
Not
You're
even gonna wait
stay,
a week.
You ain't gonna stay, Lord. You ain't gonna stay down to Weebay. You're gonna be gone. It's a Wire reference, by the way.
Classic show.
I mean, it's pretty incredible. Like and you got to wonder where this sort of mentality came from, or where the idea that having a 9-to-5 was a bad thing, that working was a bad thing, is just this really sort of disturbed mentality. Like, yes, it would be nice, like, of course, a lot of women would like to date a guy who owns his own business, sure, but they're not discounting there is how great it is to be able to go home at the end of your 9-to-5 and not have to be thinking about the business 24/7 like I am.
Yes.
Not to mention that having a 9-to-5 is, like, I look at AD, like, we brought him on, he starts doing podcasts with us. It's helping every other area of his business. At some point, maybe he could start a completely separate business from what he's been able to accomplish on here. A 9-to-5 is nothing but an opportunity to help you get to the next level.
See, one of the things that's gonna piss women off is because men are much more numerate. We have to get into the numbers. We're cost benefit calculators. If I go over there to take down the water buffalo, he's big. I may get him, but if he hits me with that tusk, I'm out, or I break something, I'm dead. There's a rabbit. There's not as much meat on there, but that rabbit ain't gonna take me out. I'm a little tired. I'm gonna fuck with the rabbit. I'm gonna snack on your ass, and then I'm gonna come and get your ass in a minute when I get my boys. We laugh because we understand, because if I do that right now, I'm gone, because there's no office.
Okay, so the one thing that stands out for me is that Kevin Samuels is clearly avoiding the conversation around that's coming from this white guy when it comes to the idea that there is an issue in our community There is an issue in our community when we say that, when you hear women saying exactly what we heard, him talk about that woman saying she wanted the fast money. So the question was, I'm curious as to where that comes from, where that mindset comes from. Where does the mindset come from that, there is no value in having a 9-to-5? There is no value in working for someone else. I don't know why this is a question that escapes the mindsets of us in Black America. Like, why is it a bad thing for you to work for someone else? And you have to, it's sad when you see Black men sitting at the table with a white man. I guess he's that white man, right? Try to keep us down. Anyway, it's bad when you see Black men who are sitting down at the table with a white man who has to explain to you that it is a good thing for you to have a solid job as a means to get you to whatever your next level may be, so that you can acquire the type of financial stability that you're looking for and or experience that you need to move into the next phase of your life and potentially be in the business by yourself. Kevin Samuels did not give that man his commentary and his question an answer. And he's done that several times over. So here's my thing. For those of you who are out there that says Kevin Samuels is trying to reestablish marriage in the Black community, help me understand what that looks like when his idea of success and a high value man is not in alignment with any of the character of the man. The other thing that stands out for me is that he has a high level of emotionalism that plays into his conversations with women when they don't buy what he's selling. Okay, which is interesting to me because he comes from marketing and sales, right? You're supposed to know how to sell yourself without becoming emotionally unraveled. Okay, so I'm just curious as to what that looks like. You're trying to reestablish Black people being in marriages and healthy relationships, but you're out here having these conversations, devaluing women. You're telling women that they are the ownership. I mean, their ownership is the Black man in the Black community. And at the same time, you say that it's okay for people to date outside of their race. So make it make sense for me. It's either one or the other. You believe that people are free to pursue what it is that their heart's desire or their energy is pulling them to, or you feel like innately, people should stay within their own groups and date within their own groups. The other thing that he mentioned is that, no, I feel like white people date within their own group. Interesting. So the underpinnings of the valuation that Kevin Samuels attributes to high value men and women and success in relationships involve the woman yielding her sense of self to that of a man. As a result, a man having the option to exercise promiscuity within the confines of a marriage, and that woman accepting that he is just being a man. Also, he says that it's important for the image projected into the community to look like the man has his things together, look like he's positioned well in life. And he equates this with having an escort on your arms that has a high value and her price tag for what you're paying her to go to an event with you, because that opens up opportunities for you. Man, it opens up opportunities. So how can you have both of these things? How can you have a woman at home, a wife at home, right? And then still be exercising your options, showing up to company functions with an escort on your arm and not the wife on your arms that Kevin Samuel says that that's what the Black woman values. How is it that Kevin Samuel says that the woman's position is one to where she loses her sense of self and submits to the fact that she is owned by the Black man, right? And then you are complaining when you say that the woman doesn't bring anything to the table. However, in conversations where women say, well, I'm going to bring my understanding. I'm going to be his peace. Whatever these things that a woman says, you're refuting those things and saying that, no, you're not going to be those things because you don't have anything of value. You want a man that makes this amount of money, but you don't make that amount of money. And then you see women in front of you that make that amount of money. And you're like, well, you know what? Your money doesn't matter. You're not educated, things like that. And then when a woman comes before you and she's educated and she's all these things, then you refute that as well. So let's go to other things that contradict themselves in his rhetoric. So he says that in this conversation, clearly, this black man is sitting here. I have 2 baby mamas. I have kids by 2 different women. I got 2 different children, 2 different baby mamas, right? And then you go to talking about a woman that has 2 kids by 2 different baby daddies and how she is a negative connotation associated with the black community because she has multiple baby daddies. So she's the problem, but you don't address what he just told you before because he just told you that he has 2 kids by 2 different women. For some reason, I just can't. I can't buy it. Make it make sense for me, Kevin Samuels followers, please. Manosphere, show up. Show me what it is that you need in order for you to see that you're blindly following a person that constantly contradicts the message that they're putting out there. I noticed that every time this man is on an interview, he says he's losing his ground. Okay, that's the reality. He says something different than what he's been preaching on this show for all of this time. He moves differently. At the very beginning of this conversation, this is what really stands out. Kevin Samuels says that he values a woman that has value. He values women who get married at the point where they're capable of finding love and then understands that their value decreases over time. He had a woman to call his show who was in her 30s, and he asked her, how valuable do you feel you are as compared to how valuable you were when you were in your 20s? This young lady answered that she's more valuable now in her 30s than she was in her 20s. This guy says, how is that possible when your vagina has more miles on it when you're in your 30s? And in the same segment, he says that he values women in the strip club that are stripping, escorts that are selling their bodies, because these are women of high value. Look at the way they take care of their bodies. Listen, people, the objectification of women is not the answer to the deep-seated issues of trauma in the Black experience of men. The objectification of women is not the answer to the deep-seated trauma in the Black community in general. Likewise, the objectification of men is not the answer. Accountability has to be taken on both parts, but we have to be pragmatic in the way that we approach who's responsible for and accountable for the misdeeds, missteps that have led to how we conceptualize healthy relationships at this point. In healthy relationships where we value a man, women, we have to get to the point where we understand that the value of a man does not lie within the contents in his bank account. So the number associated with his bank account, the number associated with his money, because apparently This guy, Kevin Samuels, obviously comes from no money. And that's a broke man's mentality, to think that the value of you are only as valuable as the amount of money that you are able to make, your potential for making money. That's the only thing that you have to bring to the table. And you can have a conversation candidly with other men at this table. And clearly, these other men at this table are curious as to how you feel the way you feel about that said valuation, but you're pushing marriage, right? So you can have this conversation where you're saying that you are able, as a man, to do whatever the hell you want, to go out there and have sex with who you want, behave sexually how you want, behave in your interaction patterns as far as who you take to your Christmas dinners, business functions, whatever, take an escort there, hang out in strip clubs and live your best life. He showed up to this interview with a woman that was allegedly high value. That was his response. When these other guys said, well, you know, people, you know, you're talking about relationships and things like that, but so what about you and your relationships and people? How do you feel when people talk about the fact that you're not married and things like that? And he started to talk about people when they ask about his marital status are projecting. You're not a clinician, sir. So it's important to a person that's trying to figure out if they can follow your advisements. When you're just advising, you don't have any theoretical founding principles that guide the constructs in which you are operating and telling these people relationships are healthy when XYZ is in place. So, of course, the only thing that they can naturally defer to is going to be your relationship success. So the question that I have to ask, for those of you who are following Kevin Samuels, especially the ones that are following him religiously, would you follow a financial advisor? Would you vet the services of a financial advisor without proven outcomes in his portfolio, his own portfolio? Would you go and bank with an institution that did not have a history or a reputation for not overcharging fees at their banking institution, or that didn't have a history of taking people's money, right? Like, my thing is this: you do your research when you do these other things in your life. And some of you don't even do that. I'm going to be honest. Like, they have Cash App now and you get Cash App cards and you think that's a whole bank account and that's good. That's the reality. But outside of that, you will do the research and you will go and do all of this extra stuff when it comes to every interaction that you do. You want to do these very in-depth searches and ask all these questions about the people that you want to be in a relationship and victimize, right? However, you will not do the same when you're going after content on the internet that either supports or helps you to, find yourself in a different place, more education and insight around some of these issues that you're curious about. What's happening is you're bonding based on the trauma that you've experienced, which is very similar to the trauma that the person that you're bonding with has experienced. That's what Kevin Samuels' followers are. All of you are bonding with his negative experience with women. He talked about how immature he was when he was married in his relationships, and that he should have maybe stayed his course because his women that he was married to, the women that he was married to, have a high level of value. He didn't realize their worth until after the fact. He talked about understanding the value of keeping money in the house. These are things that he talked about, statements that he made that does make sense. Because the reality is, a woman adds value by way of helping you stay balanced. She's your balance. She's your peace. All of these things. She's not your property. And you are not hers. It is an honor and a privilege to be with someone, to be tethered with someone, to groom a relationship with someone who is your complementary component to you and yourself and your development and your becoming. It is not advisable for you to objectify a person, for you to look at a person and say, okay, the value of this man that I have is in his pockets. It's just crazy, especially when you're talking about women have missed opportunities to settle down because they were in love in their 20s. Not everybody who's in their 20s and marrying into relationships are truly happy. Not everybody who is married to someone are truly happy. Not everybody who is single are, though they're not truly happy sometimes too. People, your happiness comes from within. Your life goals have to make sense. The things that you do in your life have to align with the goals that you say that you're going after. So very similar to what Kevin Samuel says. He wants to know what people want, right? And what they're willing to do to get it. The reality is this: you cannot compare what you want and what another woman wants or another person wants, right? And then look at what they're doing to get it and line that up with what you need to be doing, because your course and their course is a very different course. You're traveling a road in a different car than they are. It's going to take a different type of gas for a diesel truck than a flex fuel gasoline truck. Okay? So at the end of the day, if you guys are both traveling this road and you're watching what they're doing, right? You're watching how they're preparing and what gas stations they're going to stop at to make sure they can make this trip. Guess what? If there are no gas stations that have the gas available that you need in your car, your ass is going to be broke down on the side of the road. And you're not going to have the means that you need to make it to where you're going. Quit comparing yourself to everybody else. Your journey is not their journey. When you're trying to, let me explain something. When people are in therapy, because for some reason, I think that there's this misconceptualization and about what therapy is. I hear people saying all the time, I go to therapy so you can give me the answer, so you can help fix me, so you can fix me. We do not fix people. We lead you to the internal resources that you naturally possess that you have now suppressed for so long. And your access to it is just so far away, right? We help bring that stuff back into alignment so that you can access what you need to move into a space of discernment and do what you need to do to get to a better level of functioning, a greater version of yourself. It's about self-discovery, right? And unveiling those layers that create the propensity for you to have healthy relationships and interactions and behaviors in your life and with other people. So a woman's value does not decrease over time. Her vagina doesn't decrease over time. I'm just going to put that out there based on her age. If anything, it's based on her sexual activity and what she's doing. It's not going to be based on her age. You say, based on the evidence I've seen, Black Americans as a whole are the least wealthy. Income is important, but I suggest we get used to the fact that financial struggle is highly probable in relationships. Possibly. So when you say based on the evidence that you've seen, I'm going to be very, very frank about this. And I know I'm going to piss a lot of people off. But the reality is, in the Black community, there is a very old saying and a very old underlying trauma response when it comes to interacting with other people, especially other people that are in this country that happen to be white, especially banks that happen to be white owned. Financial institutions that are white owned, they're not going to move into places where they're going to put their money into those systems. The other thing is business, reporting business, and what stays into what happens in the Black family, what happens in the Black household stays in the Black household. So literally, if they feel like their government is against them, if they feel like that the white man is holding them down, if they feel like all of these things, how many Black families do you think are going to accurately report their financial situation to the IRS? Half of the time, Black families, when they are audited by the IRS, more information has come from the Department of Labor in their state to indicate they made more money than what they said. Lots of people are staying home and not going out actively pursuing jobs that can track their income. Why do you think so? The question raised on this show was a question of of why would you go out there and be a heroin dealer when you have a chemical engineering degree? There you go. That's the answer to that question. So that you don't have anything to track your flexible income, your gross income, that disqualifies you for other things that you may feel you're entitled to because you are a part of the Black community and you're trying to get what's due to you. That's the mindset that's in so many people that are in these quote unquote impoverished communities in the Black community. I have yet to see even an 80%, even a 51% population representation of people who are in disenfranchised communities, right? People who are on government assistance who look like us. I've seen it in the white communities, but the ones who look like us and don't have adequate means of dress, transportation, and all that other stuff. I've never seen it. So even though sometimes we say that we're in very hard and dire circumstances, the realities are this. We still stand in those long ass lines for Jordans and they're not cheap. We still walk around having Birkin bags and they're not cheap. We still walk around going, you know what I mean? There are things, if we are really people who don't have this money that's been documented that we don't have, then why are we the main contributor to the markets inside of Lenox Mall? But the community around Lenox is white. We're the people shopping there. So there are some truths that we have to face in our community that will give us the answers to the things that we're looking for without us having to cover it up with acting like we're blind to what we do. It's just that we are very manipulative in the core of us because we've learned from our ancestors. We've learned from our parents and our grandparents that we cannot trust these entities that are documenting our finances, that are documenting how we are moving and where we are and how many of us are in our houses and what that means. We have these misconstructs inside of our mind that says that the society that we are a part of is not representative of our outcomes. William was on here yesterday talking about these laws weren't made for us or by us in America. We are Americans. Black people are, they're Americans. Look at this. This is just absolutely crazy. For you to think that you are anything other than a citizen of America when you have a birth certificate that was given to you here. And laws are made for citizens. That is absolutely beyond me. Beyond me. Beyond me. But so the thing is, Kevin Samuels operates from a fear of death complex. And the reality is that when you have a fear of dying alone, that really means that you live in fear every day. So your life is rooted by and seated by fear, right? Of that loneliness, which means that you're constantly in search of tethering yourself to someone for the purpose of not dying alone. People, let me tell you something. People are always going to die alone. He talks about what's happening in Asian countries, but it's not just in Asian countries. It happens everywhere. In America, we don't value our older people. How are we any different? So people will die alone. Even if you are married, you're still more than likely going to die alone. One of you, you're not going to die at the same time. Unless you're in a car accident or something like that, freak accident, house burns down, whatever. But the propensity of you dying alone is highly great. You came into this world alone and you're going to leave here alone. Nobody can travel that journey with you. It's 100% for you and only you. So to operate from the idea that you only need to tether yourself to someone for the sake of not dying alone, or because he saw his aunts end up in that spiral. He saw his mother get married later in life. And his ideas around healthy relationships are absolutely skewered. They don't make sense. They don't. A man's valuation and a woman's valuation in a relationship, to be honest with you, those things are based on the principles that drive the underpinnings of understanding of life of those people. So if anything, Kevin Samuels should be pushing for people to have a greater capacity to connect themselves with other people, a greater capacity to explore their environments, and a greater capacity to learn from their exposures and experience in life that allows them to mature through their growth experiences of life. And so somebody tag the manosphere. Let me know where you guys are on this video. Like, I am 100% here for accountability, and I'm just seeing that you guys absolutely refuse to hold Kevin Samuels accountable, just like Umar Johnson. And I think it has to do with the fact that we're just lost as a culture of people. And we've got to do a better job at bringing it all in and embracing one another, looking at the hurt that's within our community and embracing it, calling a thing, so that we can alleviate some of that pain, some of this trauma, and some of the way that we relate to one another as a result of that pain and that trauma. But so that is my show for the day. Know that I absolutely love you guys. I wish you well. Hopefully you go out there and as a result of watching this content today or something that I said over the course of this particular broadcast resonates with you in such a way, you go out there and you do something great for someone else that you're connected to. I hope that you guys are putting positive energy into the world around you so that we can all be successful in our outcomes. So yeah, later days.
Who alive can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I rip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.